Is this the year someone finally dethrones the Astros from atop the AL West? I think it is, and I think there are 5 reasons why the Rangers will do it. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On to the Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan since 2010, the founder and host for all 5 seasons of this Locked On Rangers podcast. Today is Friday, August 18th. Your Rangers are 72-49, alone in first place atop the AL West with a 2.5 game lead over those stinking Houston Astros. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you don't already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Subscribe on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, before we get into today's episode, this show is brought to you by Sleeper. Swing for the fences on Sleeper picks, and you could win up to 100 times your money. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDON, and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. Now, on yesterday's show, some of y'all might have been mad at me for being the pessimist for saying 5 reasons why the Rangers won't win the AL West, but that's only because I was setting up today's show. 5 reasons why they will win the AL West. Gotta hear both sides, right? Sometimes no, but I think in this case it's fair to hear both sides of the argument, because there are a lot of optimistic Rangers fans, a lot of pessimistic Rangers fans. There's guys and gals on both sides of the pessimism to optimism scale. Many of us have been hurt many times before by the Rangers, but I'm still impressed by the optimists who, even after all the pain and suffering the Rangers have caused Rangers fans over the last, 10, 15, 51 years in Texas, it's admirable that there are still a lot of people that are very optimistic, and I kind of lean towards that. I have been hurt, I have been burned before. I know I say I'm cripplingly addicted Texas Ranger fan since 2010, but I have been a fan for my whole life, but it was just reached a new level in 2010 for very obvious reasons. But there have been a lot of pain along the way, and for the most part, the last 5 years, unfortunately, the Astros have been a very good baseball team. The Rangers have not won the AL West since 2016, which was a great year. Both those titles in 15 and 16 were a lot of fun, even though the Rangers didn't go on to win either of those ALDS series against the Blue Jays, which is a topic for another discussion. Winning the AL West over the Astros was a lofty feat, especially since both those years it felt like the Astros were the ones that were picked by far that was the start of their reign. This was when the Astros were going to come out of the doldrums and beat the Rangers. And at that point, the Rangers were still the reigning power to be. The powers have flipped since then, but this team is on top of the AL West by 2.5 games. They have a decent schedule heading down the road. It's not a whole lot of really, really tough teams that are left. They don't have to play the Dodgers or the Braves again, which is great. I don't think there's any series against the Rays or the Orioles, which is great. There's not a whole lot of really great teams left on their schedule. The Brewers might be one of the better teams the Rangers have left to play outside of that 3-game series against the Astros. But without further ado, here are my 5 reasons why the Rangers will win the AL West, which is actually what I believe. I do believe they will win the AL West. Reason number 1. This Rangers team has a deeper lineup than the Astros. They have a deeper lineup than basically every other team in all of baseball outside of Atlanta. Atlanta's just on another world offensively this year, and it looked like maybe the Rays were going to have a deeper lineup than the Rangers, but it's proven that the Rangers lineup is very, very deep, has 5 All-Stars in it, 5 All-Star starters, and they also got Nathan Eovaldi, which we'll talk about that in just a second. But this lineup 1 through 9, no matter who's in it, is incredibly deep. They just keep calling up guys despite the injuries to Josh Young, to Jonah Heim, to at times Corey Seager. I mean, it doesn't matter who they're calling up because they are all getting the job done. It's been a little bit of a rough go for Leo Taveras. We'll talk a little bit in the second segment about JPM maybe replacing him as an everyday center fielder. I don't know if we're quite there yet, but in this Friday lineup, we did see JPM get the start over Leo Taveras. But the point stands that everyone in this lineup is doing some damage. Robbie Grossman has an OPS over 900 since the All-Star break, and his OPS is finally above 700. Travis Jankowski has an on-base in the 370s, nearly 380. Josh Young has been slugging as good as anybody. Plus, at the top, you have a top 4 of Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, Nathaniel Lowe, and Adolis Garcia, all of whom have been absolutely phenomenal. Just phenomenal, 1 through 9, especially 1 through 6 when healthy, when Josh Young is there hitting 5th and Jonah Heim is there hitting 6th. And, well, we don't know if that's going to be the case because Mitch Garver has also been on an absolute tear as of late. It just goes to show you how deep this lineup is. And even with Ezekiel Duran's struggles, he still has an OPS over 800. There are just so many guys in this lineup that can hit, that can do damage. And the Astros lineup, I thought, was going to be one of the best in baseball this year. And it turns out it has not been the case. Jose Abreu has been really just terrible this year. Jeremy Pena has taken several steps back offensively. Bregman has been, well, mediocre for most of the season and then kind of turned it on. Kyle Tucker has been, well, himself. Yordan Alvarez, when he's been playing, has been his Yordan Alvarez self. Same with Jose Altuve, but those two combined, in Yordan and Jose Altuve, have combined for 127 games between the two of them. That's not a whole lot. And yeah, Chas McCormick's explosion has been really cool for them with an OPS over 900. But I mean, for the most part, the bottom third of their lineup is nowhere near as dangerous as the Rangers is. And they keep deciding to put Jose Abreu up there in the cleanup spot. Well, not now that he's on the IL, but this Rangers lineup optimizes where guys are hitting in the order, and it is deep 1 through 9, one of the best in all of baseball, and it's just simply better than the Astros. It's better than the Mariners, better than the Angels, better than everybody else in the AL West. And I remember being told that the Mariners were going to definitely have a better lineup than the Rangers this year. I find that kind of funny, since I don't think anybody who is on their starting and according to their baseball reference page has an OPS over 800, whereas the Rangers have, let's see, how many guys over 800? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 different guys with an OPS over 800 of their starting 9, the guys who have played the most at certain positions. But anyway, this is a really deep lineup and one of the best offenses in baseball, and it's not just the lineup that is deeper than the Astros. It is also somehow the starting rotation, which is mind-boggling if you think about where these teams started at the beginning of the year. The Astros were one of the deepest pitching teams, and they just sustained injury after injury after injury. The Rangers have sustained a few injuries of their own. I mean, nobody that the Astros have lost pitching-wise is anywhere near Jacob deGrom. Nobody on earth is when Jacob deGrom is healthy. But the Rangers have sustained that injury. They sustained an injury to Nathan Eovaldi, who looks like he might be back around September 1st. That is the hope. But even without Nathan Eovaldi, this rotation is fantastic, including the additions they picked up at the deadline. Max Scherzer has a 1.80 ERA in 3 starts and 20 innings. We've seen Jordan Montgomery, who's got a 2.50 ERA in 3 starts and 18 innings. I mean, this rotation also includes Dane Dunning with a 3.10 ERA, John Gray with a 3.50 ERA, and Andrew Heaney with a good start tonight on Friday could lower his ERA down just above 4. It's at 4.17 right now. So, I mean, this rotation is fantastic. It is one of the best in all of baseball, and then we don't know what's going to happen when Nathan Eovaldi comes back. If Andrew Heaney moves to the pen and your worst starter in your rotation is maybe John Gray with a 3.50 ERA or Dane Dunning with a 3.10 ERA, that is one of, if not the best rotations in all of baseball. Coming up, we're going to talk a little bit more about why the Rangers will win the AL West and a certain debate about former front office members versus current front office members that I think should not be happening at all. But first, let's word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Want the chance to win more money with less picks? Head to Sleeper, the #1 sports app, where you can win up to 100 times your money on just 2 or more fantasy baseball picks. Do you think that Adolis Garcia is going to hit a home run in his Peagle uniform tonight? He has been fantastic on these Friday and Saturday night games at home while wearing these Rangers City Connect jerseys. Well, if you do, then you can go to Sleeper and swing for the fences with up to 100 times payouts. All you have to do is choose 2 or more players that you like, select more or less on their stat categories like home run, strikeouts, hits, and more. Get your picks right and you could win big. Use promo code LOCKEDON and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. Shout out to the Everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On Monday, I'll be breaking down this huge weekend series against Milwaukee. The Rangers take on the Brewers this weekend. You can catch every pitch for the hometown broadcast on SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search Rangers. Now we're getting into the 5 reasons why the Rangers will win the AL West. And reason number 3 is the Rangers have a better record against winning teams. The Rangers are 31-26 against teams with a winning record, and Houston is 30-33, a losing record against teams with a winning record. So the Rangers are better at beating up on the good teams than the Astros are. This means unequivocally that the Astros must be frauds. Well, I mean, not necessarily, but it does mean that the Rangers are doing a much better job of beating the good teams, not just beating up on the bad teams. The Rangers are good against everybody. So it seems like the Astros have an easier schedule in September than the Rangers do, at least by strength of schedule wise. But I really don't think it matters all that much. The Rangers are playing incredibly well against good teams, against bad teams, against mediocre teams. It doesn't really matter. This Rangers team just keeps on winning against literally everybody, especially in this month of August, especially in the second half. This team is on fire right now, and it literally does not matter who they play, especially since they're not playing the 3 or 4 best teams. Besides them, it definitely helps, but I think that means that you can kind of throw the winning record versus losing record of whoever the Rangers are playing out the door. This team is just going to mash no matter who they play. And number 4 reason why the Rangers will win the AL West is the Rangers have a fresher bullpen. That starting pitcher boost, the edge the Rangers have in their rotation, that is also plays into this. I mean, the Rangers pitchers are going very deep into games. Dane Dunning, John Gray, not so much Andrew Heaney, but we've seen how deep Max Scherzer can go into games, how consistently Jordan Montgomery can go deep into games, give you quality starts. I mean, these guys are providing you innings, and so you're not having to use your best relievers as often. I think Houston definitely has a better bullpen than the Rangers, but it's also a lot more overworked. The Houston Astros starters, there are a lot of young guys in their rotation. Hunter Brown, JP France, and we've also seen it quite a bit of Ronald Blanco. Just Luis Garcia's definitely had his moments. He's not young, but he really can't go all that deep into games, and I think he's the one. Yeah, we're not going to see him again for the rest of the season. But I mean, even Christian Javier, who was fantastic last year, he's got a 4.5 ERA this year, and he's not able to go very deep into games at all. I mean, the only one who really can is Fromber and Justin Verlander, which even Verlander has been kind of mediocre since he's came back to the Astros. 3 games, 18 innings, a 4.50 ERA. So while this Astros bullpen is really, really good, they are very, very overworked. Phil Maton is on the 15-day IL. They've had to option guys like Seth Martinez, Ronald Blanco. I mean, other guys who have like just really made a big difference at times. And Rafael Montero has been used a whole lot this year, already 50 games, and he's got a 5.5 ERA. So I think while the Astros bullpen is better, it is very overworked, and they are giving up a lot more leads late in games than the Rangers bullpen is, which is pretty fresh for the most part. Even though it's not as deep, I think this Rangers starting staff, I mean, it makes such a big difference on the bullpen. And the number 5 reason why the Rangers will win the AL West over the Astros is that this team is simply better. This Rangers team has just been better all season, from top to bottom, every single aspect. I mean, basically everything. The coaching staff, the hitting, the bench, the depth, the starting rotation. I mean, all of these things that I listed, this Rangers team has just been more consistently winning games for longer stretches of time. They were great at the beginning of the season. They had a little bit of a mini slump in July. Things weren't super great, but they've turned things around and have been as hot as anybody in the month of August. And I think that that's going to continue. The Rangers are only going to get healthier. They've gone on this incredibly hot stretch for a decent chunk without Jonah Heim, a decent chunk without Josh Young, a decent chunk without Nathan Eovaldi, and it just does not matter. This team is so incredibly deep and talented and good. It is time to believe that this is the time that the Rangers can win the AL West. It's really a lot going to come down to that 3-game series at the beginning of September, like I've said about a bazillion times, but this is the team to do it. They have been consistent. They have been trustworthy. Hopefully the Rangers don't just get shellacked in this game on Friday night against the Brewers and kind of undermine my point, but I think even if they do, it's all about the long haul. There are still 41 games left in this season, and for the first 121, this Rangers team has been simply better than everybody else in the AL West, and simply better than most other teams in the American League and all of Major League Baseball. This is a team that should win the AL West, and even if they don't, they're still primed for a deep playoff run that would still end that drought of playofflessness, however you would say that. And I really do think that this is the team to finally dethrone the Astros. It'll be the first 162-game season where the Astros haven't won the AL West since 2016. There was that 2020 season where the A's won it, but that was 60 games and was kind of weird. So it would be fitting for that Houston run to be bookended by another Rangers run of dominance, and hopefully that just means that the Astros can be on their way down. That would be nice in general. But taking the AL West this year would be absolutely huge, way better than anyone expected at the beginning of the season. A season where Chris Young has been in charge, and there has been a little bit of debate and comparison blowing in the last couple of days, and there was a nice article by Evan Grant of the Dallas Morning News that I kind of want to touch on just briefly, and also talk about JPM and, of course, our Rangers prospect of the week. But first, this word from our sponsors. Shout out to the Everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On Monday's show, we'll be breaking down this weekend series against Milwaukee. The Rangers take on the Brewers this weekend. You can catch every pitch of the hometown broadcast on SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search Rangers. Now, before we get into the Dallas Morning News article, Julio Pablo Martinez is starting in this Friday night game in center field yet again over Leody Taveras, and I think that's a sign that we may be seeing a whole lot more of Julio Pablo Martinez. He has had great success in his short stint so far in the big leagues. The Rangers have won all but one of the games that he started. The only one they lost was that 10-inning weird game against San Francisco, and then they lost the one that he appeared in as a pinch hitter where he went 1-for-1. But for the most part, JPM has played a very big role on this Rangers team so far. In just a short stint, he is already making an impact. He has reached base multiple times in all but one of his starts, and in the one game that he didn't start, he went 1-for-1 in a pinch hit opportunity in a big spot and was able to start a rally that the Rangers unfortunately could not finish. But I think that this means JPM is going to get a bigger role with the Rangers, either playing every day in center field or left field, sometimes over Leody Taveras when Leody just needs an extra day off. Leody, I think, has had some better at-bats as of late than his stats would indicate, and same with Ezekiel Duran. But both those guys are getting the day off on Friday against a very, very tough right-handed pitcher for the Brewers. But I think this just means JPM is going to be in there. He is producing results as opposed to good at-bats. And I think transitioning that mindset that I've had, at least, while watching this team when they're bad, of like, okay, let's look and see, not necessarily who's, it's kind of like watching minor league baseball, of like, okay, it doesn't really matter as much what the results are as much as the process. But now when the Rangers are trying to win games, and right now, good at-bats are nice and helpful for predicting what will be in the future. But the Rangers need results right now. Whether it's a good at-bat or a bad at-bat, it doesn't matter as much as if the result is good or bad, because the Rangers need good results. Whether they're repeatable or not, it doesn't matter as much as if they are happening right now. And JPM, it's not to say that JPM's had bad at-bats, but I think that if you're betting on the future of a player being a more impactful major league career, I'd lean more towards Leody Taveras as opposed to Julio Pablo Martinez, but I could be wrong. I mean, Julio Pablo Martinez had a lot of promise, and he also had eye surgery before last season, which has led to a lot of his success. His eyes weren't working properly, and as a hitter, I mean, that is just a night and day difference. If you can't see the baseball, then how the heck are you going to recognize pitches or recognize what's in the strike zone or not? And it's made the world of difference. He has been exceptional in his short stint in the big leagues, already a .3 baseball reference WAR in just 19 at-bats over his, 6 games so far. Got a slash line of, where'd we go? 421, 435, 474, a 908 on base with a couple of walks to 4 strikeouts. Only 1 extra base hit so far. I'm sure we'll see him if he keeps getting extended run with his first big league homer, but smart base running, decent defense in the outfield. Like, this guy is a winning player, and the Rangers, I see why they wanted to cut bait with Bubba to put him on the active roster and did not send him back down. I mean, Jankowski has provided some value as well, but I think that JPM has jumped him in terms of the pecking order in left field as an everydayer, and I think that is a great thing for him and a great thing for the Rangers. I mean, if Ezekiel Duran is going to get everyday at-bats in left field, or if Leody is going to get everyday at-bats in center field, both those guys are going to have to hit their way into doing so. And, as much as I love Evan Carter, and I'll talk about the great week that he had, including the first game that I've ever seen from him in person, which was a very, very nice one. Those guys are going to have to force their way onto the roster and outperform a guy who is performing very, very well. So it's a very encouraging sign to see JPM thriving, and a good sign for the Rangers, because they could use every extra productive player that they can get for this stretch run to hopefully win the AL West from the Astros. Now, there was this great article on the Dallas Morning News' website written by Evan Grant, talking with John Daniels, catching up about what his life has been like since he was fired from the Rangers about a year ago, about this time a year ago, how he's been thriving, finding everything that he's wanting. It's just a really, really great article. You should go check it out if you haven't already. And I don't really want to get into the specifics as much about that as I would a certain debate that it feels like 2010 again, because there was, or I guess maybe it was 2012, maybe 2014, I don't know, that early Rangers run, there was a lot of stupid online discourse about JD versus Nolan, being a JD versus a Nolan guy, and that was just some of the dumbest arguments that were around the team at the time of, Nolan's the reason that this team had success, and it was as soon as he started going to the Astros was the reason they had success. No, Nolan Ryan barely made any decisions from 2010 onward. He was not the one making trades, making decisions, and that was John Daniels. Almost all of those moves were John Daniels. The Mark Teixeira trade, that was John Daniels. The decision to go get Cole Hamels, that was John Daniels. The decision to sign Ryan Dempster, that was Nolan. The decision to sign Lance Berkman, that was Nolan. Those are about the only impact moves that Nolan Ryan made in those years. So a lot of the success, the vast majority of the success, I would say, is the credit goes to John Daniels for building that team, not Nolan Ryan. And now that the Rangers are having success, literally about a year after they fired John Daniels, everyone's saying, John Daniels being a part of this team is the reason that this team sucked. Chris Young is the one who has made all of this happen. And I don't want to denigrate Chris Young at all. I don't want to compare these guys at all, because Chris Young is basically John Daniels' handpicked successor. No matter what was going to happen after the season, John Daniels was going to step down into a lesser role, not be the president of baseball operations. He was going to be in more of an advisory role, kind of like what Dayton Moore is right now, because JD has the experience, but he's looking for something a little more hands-off. And Chris Young is basically following John Daniels' plan. Like, it's not like Chris Young has come in here and completely reinvented the wheel of what John Daniels is doing. Not to say that he hasn't put his own spin on it, and I think he has, and he's done a fantastic job. Like, the moves that Chris Young has made while he's been in charge have been exceptional. Getting Bruce Bochy, being able to convince Jacob deGrom to sign here, Nathan Eovaldi to sign here, the trades he made this deadline, the draft he did this year, drafting Wyatt Langford. All those are great. And I don't want to go through that again with the JD versus Nolan nonsense. JD laid the groundwork for most of this. He drafted or traded for most of this young core. He helped sign Corey Seager, Marcus Semien. He traded for Jonah Heim, traded for Nathaniel Lowe, drafted Josh Young, signed Leody Taveras, traded for Adolis Garcia. Like, a lot of these, also made the trade for Ezekiel Duran. Like, a lot of these moves are John Daniels. So it is both these guys together who have combined to help make this season the magical one that it has been. And I think that just crapping on John Daniels, not to say that JD was perfect. Obviously, I'm a big John Daniels supporter. He definitely had his flaws. The way that he drafted players from basically 2010 to really 2019 it felt like the first good draft that he had. There's just not a whole lot of success there outside of like Joey Gallo. The first round picks from 2010 to like 2019 were just really bad. But he did do a lot of other things well, and I think that crapping on the guy who built the only two teams in franchise history to win the only two teams in franchise history to ever win a playoff series, just a single one. It feels stupid and childish and nonsensical, and it also diminishes what Chris Young is doing. Like, he has done a lot, but there's a lot of groundwork laid for him by JD, and I think he's going to keep being a fantastic GM, make moves of his own, and get credit for that. But I don't think that we should just praise Chris Young at the expense of crapping on John Daniels. He's with Tampa Bay. They're thriving too. He's thriving. Just everyone chill out. We don't have to talk about John Daniels much anymore. That is my soapbox rant. But speaking of guys who were drafted by John Daniels, I want to get my prospect of the week. Emiliano Teodo is a guy who is one of the more interesting prospects in the Rangers system. He's a guy who has a guy who hits triple digits. He actually wasn't drafted by the Rangers. He was signed. He's a 22-year-old out of the Dominican Republic, listed at 6'1", 165 pounds, the right-handed starting pitcher. And he had his best start of the season on the 15th. That was, I believe, Monday, Tuesday. It doesn't matter. But it was against the Rome Braves. Went 5 innings, allowed 2 hits, 2 walks, 9 strikeouts in this one. He's a guy who I think ultimately ends up in the bullpen, but you got to keep starting him for as long as you can keep him as a starter. I wouldn't be surprised if he stayed in Hickory for the rest of the year. He is 22 years old and won't be 23 until February 14th of next year. So he's done a decent job this year. He didn't start his season until the end of May, and this is by far his best start of the year. Only the third time, that he went 5 innings, but allowing just 2 walks. He is normally a pretty wild guy. Having him see 9 strikeouts is also really great. Another guy who I considered was Jose Corniel, who has been very, very good. Also with the Hickory Crawdads, also went 5 innings of shutout ball against the Rome Braves. 6 strikeouts for him, though, and no walks. Very good season for Corniel, who has just been very, very consistent this year. Not a guy who I think has a super high-end ceiling. I think could be a back-end starter, but this year, in 2 stops between Hickory and Down East, he's got a 3.15 ERA, 88 2/3 innings, and 102 strikeouts. Really good stuff for him. Not a whole lot of walks, decent number of strikeouts, and not a whole lot of hard contact. That is some really great stuff. Now, on Hickory, on the hitting side, it was a little bit of a rough week for Wyatt Langford, the first one he has had in his minor league career, albeit a very brief one. He has played 15 total games. He's played 5 of those in the last week, where he is hitting .059 on base of 200, slugging just .818, a 318 OPS. Still for the season, he's got an OPS of 1,018. He wasn't going to continue to have a 14 or 100-ish OPS that he did in his first 10 games. But one fun fact that I did learn about Wyatt Langford this year, thanks to Lisa on Twitter, is that his teammates call him Gator, which I don't know if you're like me and that your brain works this way, but whenever I hear the term Gator applied to somebody as a nickname, I always think of Will Ferrell in The Other Guys. Just, yeah, I'm not going to quote that because this is a family show, and my mother listens, but a very funny movie always makes me think of that. But Wyatt Langford having a nickname of Gator is just very fun. Not a great week for him, but it's fine. He's a great prospect. He'll have bad weeks. Fast-tracking him to the big leagues seems like isn't going to happen this year, which is great because he's a first-rounder and he needs to be able to go through some struggles at high A. We'll probably still see him at Double A next year, but, I mean, who knows? Also, another guy I wanted to shout out and give a little bit of love is Aiden Curry, who has been having a very, very good season. Went 4 innings with 4 innings of 1-run ball this week with 5 strikeouts, and for the year he has just been, again, one of the more consistent pitchers for the Rangers system. He is with the Down East Wood Ducks. He is 21 years old. I believe he was one of the guys who was signed out after the 2020 season that was undrafted. There are quite a few of those guys who the Rangers signed that are doing pretty well. He's got a 2.37 ERA in 18 games, 76 innings with 93 strikeouts for Down East. He is 20 years old, a year and a half younger than the average player at that level. So just, there's a guy to keep your eye on. Another guy to keep your eye on is someone who you might have heard of, a guy named Evan Carter. Maybe you've heard of him. Top player in the Rangers farm system, depending on who you ask. I still think he's tops over Wyatt Langford, not just because of this week. Evan had a good week and Wyatt had a bad week. It's just Evan's got a little bit more of a body of work at the minor league level, and he's in Double A, where he had a fantastic week. It had been a little bit of a rough stretch for him in the back half of July and early August, but his last 5 games, he has been on fire. He's got a slash line of 375, 565, 625, and 1190 OPS in those 23 plate appearances, but a lot of that work has been done in the last 2 games, including last night's game where I finally got out to Frisco and was able to see him hit a triple and then score on a wild pitch. He also worked to walk because, of course, he will do that. And then the game before, he reached base 5 times with a couple hits, including a double and 3 walks. That was when he rolled up his pants legs, which was a new look, according to Tablet Participation on Twitter. He did that again on the Thursday game where he hit that triple and also walked and had some pretty good plate appearances and some decent defense in left field. But yeah, a pretty good week for Evan Carter. The one thing that I will say about Evan that I didn't really realize until I looked a little bit more into some of his advanced splits, not really that advanced, but advanced enough, is that he has not hit lefties at all this year. He has got 73 plate appearances against lefties, a 227, 301, 224 slash line, 0 of his 13 home runs, and just 1 extra base hit in those 73 plate appearances. Lefties a little bit better last year, but again, all of his sample size against minor league baseball is very small because of the pandemic season, which is the whole reason the Rangers were able to steal him from the rest of the world as a second-round pick, and also a little bit of injuries his first season as a pro. But really great to see Evan Carter in person. Can confirm he is fast, very good at baseball, and sees a lot of pitches. Very excited for the future outfield of the Rangers that will include Evan Carter and Wyatt Langford. I don't know when that's going to be, but just imagining those two guys out there. It's going to be a lot of fun seeing those guys hit the crap out of some baseballs and be pretty rangy, probably both of them at a corner, probably in opposite corners. But who knows? We'll see what the Rangers' future looks like. It definitely looks bright, and it looks like they are going to win the AL West this year. Though I gave you the 5 reasons why, and I'm feeling very confident that those reasons are going to come to fruition. Or if it's some other reason why the Rangers end up winning the AL West, I'll be okay with that too. But thank you all so much for listening and subscribing. That's going to do it for this week's editions of Locked on Rangers. We'll be back on Monday. Until next time, don't forget to enjoy first place Texas Rangers baseball.